Hey everybody, this is Becca. Thanks for checking out my channel, BeccaTownSims. Today I'm going to do two things. I'm going to show you the speed build for this house called Vieille, and we're also going to spill some tea on history. I'm going to talk to you guys about Richard III, who was, depending on your perspective, potentially a pretender to the English throne or an illegitimate king, and he may have murdered his 12 and 9-year-old nephews. So yeah, it's hot tea if you can call something that happened like over 500 years ago hot. This is it. Hot, 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 hot. So first, the house. So it's called La Vieille on the gallery. It's supposed to look historic. I saw this picture on Pinterest that hopefully I'll find and post for you guys in the video. And I thought it had kind of this Tudor flair, my build in the game anyways, and maybe a little bit of like chateau flair too with this central tower. So you guys can check that out. The inside is going to be decorated kind of like it needs a renovation because like this is an old house and probably, I don't know, it's not that modern on the inside. So that's the build. It doesn't use any particular tips or tricks. I don't even know that I use debug for this actually, but use move objects on for sure, definitely for sure. So now let's spill the tea, fam. So we're talking about Richard III. He was the brother of Edward IV. So Edward IV, we're gonna start there. So let's call him Big Ed, okay? Because he also named his kid after him, and we're gonna be talking about the kid later, because that's what old-timey people did all the time. They just like named everybody the same freaking name. So anyways, King Edward IV and Richard were brothers, and King Edward, Big Ed, as I said, had married this lady called Elizabeth Woodville. So Elizabeth Woodville was like a stone cold fox major hottie, super bae. She was not, however, nobility. And so when Big Ed married her, everybody was like, oh, what you doing? You're supposed to be marrying like some foreign nobility or something to strengthen our alliances or who, blah, blah, blah. But she was just this English lady, and she was actually the first queen of England who was a member of the king's like people, and she wasn't even like high-ranking nobility, y'all. She was like the gentry. Oh, scandalized. So the people was shook, and they were like, this doesn't sit right with us because we need you to marry somebody fancy. But hold that thought, that's just gonna come back. Her family, the Woodvilles, remember that name, the Woodvilles were like, y'all, what's up with the Woodvilles? This girl, our sister, whatever, she married the royalty. Now we important too, because the king put them in charge of all kinds of stuff. So they rose from being like the gentry to being like the most important people in the land, and which didn't sit very well with a lot of the like, you know, old money or whatever. So the king died in 1483, and his brother Richard was named in the will as being the like Lord Protector, which meant till baby Edward V, till baby Edward was going to be old enough to be the king, because he was 12 at the time, wasn't old enough to be a king. Oh my god, do you guys know 12-year-olds? Like, do not put them in charge of the government. Anyways, so Richard was supposed to be Lord Protector until Edward came of age. Well, that's cool or whatever, except for the Woodville family is like, no. Richard, we don't know him. He doesn't have our interests at heart. Like, as soon as he's Lord Protector, he basically has the powers of the king, and he can do like whatever the flip he wants. So they weren't cool with that. So they were like, hey, what if we just coordinate our little child king? What if we just get him coordinated like ASAP, like right away, and then Richard can't tell us what to do. So you're gonna have to imagine that Richard was not like super psyched about this plan, because your boy was like, Big Ed told me I was gonna have all the power in the land, and that's his wishes, and he's my brother, and this is super important to me. Like, it's not even about me, okay? It's about what my brother wanted. Like, yeah, right, Richard. But anyways, so little Prince Ed was pretty close with his mom's brother, so a Woodville. This guy was the Duke of Rivers or something. Let's call him Rivers. So Little Ed was close to Uncle Rivers, and he was living with him at the time, because like these nobles back then, y'all, they would just like ship their kids off to whoever to raise and be like, oh, you're gonna foster this kid and you're gonna foster this kid, and we're all gonna have alliances. So little baby Prince Ed was being raised by Rivers, so they were close, and Richard was like, all right, He knew the council was like wanting to coronate Edward right away. So he was like, well, I'm gonna meet up with them and I am going to escort him or whatever. So he meets up with Rivers and he's like, gotcha, man, I'm actually arresting you for treason. And he takes the little Prince Edward and he takes him to the tower, which is where the coronation like would start back then. So he took him to the tower, which is not a tower, it's a castle. I'm sure it has towers, but anyways, I didn't know that for the longest time being an American. So the uncle was arrested, and then Richard went to his little nephew, baby Ed, and he was like, hey, I had to arrest your uncle, like, you know, he kind of sucks, and he did some treason. He might have been involved in your dad's death, which was not true as far as anyone knows. Basically, Richard insinuated that because Big Ed liked to drink, that Rivers like encouraged him to drink too much, and that had something to do with him dying. It was pretty flimsy. So the council was kind of like, what is going on? Like, there were a lot of Woodvilles on the council, but there's also this guy named Hastings on the council, and Hastings had been pretty loyal to Big Ed, and so he was loyal to Richard, and he was like, Richard, I'm going to help you out. We're going to, like, make sure that we are following, like, the old king's wishes or whatever. So he had that ally, and Richard also had an ally, his buddy Buckingham. I don't know much about him. Let's just assume he was, like, a jerk social climber, because he'll come back later. So Richard has got little baby Edward in his custody, and he's got Rivers in jail, and he's like, well, how about we, you know, push off the coronation? So the coronation gets moved back, and the council's like, okay, Richard, you are totally ruling and everything, you know, it's chill, it's cool, whatever. Elizabeth Woodville, little baby Ed's mom and the queen, she's like, Richard is up to something. I know that, like, we got the coronation was pushed back like a little bit. It's still supposed to happen this year, and he's got the council approval because of Hastings or whatever, but nah, something's up. This is super sus, dude, okay? So she goes and claims sanctuary in Westminster Abbey, and so sanctuary was like this old-timey law that if somebody claimed sanctuary in a church, holy ground, you could not go arrest them. So she knew that Richard was like up to no good. So she went with her kids. She had some daughters and she had another son, a 9-year-old, and they went and claimed sanctuary. So Richard is getting like paranoid about the council, and his friend Buckingham totally plays into his paranoia. From what I can tell, like, no reason at all. Buckingham's like, yo, Richard, you know what I heard? I heard your bro Hastings is throwing you under the bus, man. I heard he's conspiring with the Woodvilles. So Richard is like, all right, we gonna deal with this. We get a deal. So he calls this meeting and he invites like his closest friends. He invites Hastings. Hastings shows up. He's like, what's up? Let's get a drink. Let's chill. Everything's cool, right? And Richard's like, nah, it's not cool. He has the guards come in. He has Hastings arrested, drags him out to the courtyard, and is like, guess what, buddy? I know all about your treason, and I'm executing you right now. So he just does it. He executes him without a trial, and it's just like, he was conspiring against me. He was a traitor. So people are like, oh my God, what's going on? This is like chaos. This is tyranny. Elizabeth Woodville, still hiding now, gets a visit from Richard, okay? And he's like, hey, Liz, what's up? I want your son. And she's like, dude, no, you can't have my son. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to take him though. So she lets him, probably because he's just been, you know, kind of killing people and doing whatever he wants. He's got the, you know, the council's like afraid, and she's got her daughters to protect. So maybe she's like, okay, you know, take my son. Maybe he's acting in good faith because, you know, the coronation's still supposed to happen. So now he's got both of the princes in the castle, and the coronation's like 6 days away, and he's like, no, this can't happen because of the Woodvilles. As soon as little baby Ed is the king, they're gonna get rid of my ass because I'm the bad guy. So what he does is he and Buckingham start spreading this rumor about how the princes aren't even legit, because they're like, yo, you remember when Big Ed married Elizabeth Woodville? That wasn't legitimate. He was supposed to be marrying somebody else, and he broke this marriage contract. And so by our laws, that means that these princes are not heirs to the throne. They are from an illegitimate marriage, and therefore I am the rightful heir. And the other thing that they do is they like raise up a bunch of supporters, and they go around town making all like roughhousing and rowdy and spreading this rumor. And also Richard takes care of the loose end, that is Rivers, the uncle of the young king. So he's like, Rivers, you know, I had you in jail for a while. I'm sorry, this is how it's gonna be. I gotta murder you now. So he kills him, doesn't have a trial. Well, he does have a trial, but it's not like a real trial, it's like a sham. So he brings Rivers to trial, and he does not even let him defend himself, and then they sentence him and murder him the same day. With the army that he and Buckingham raised, they like go around town, they go to all the important people, and they get everybody to agree, like, okay, Richard, you know what? I guess you did it. We're gonna say, sure, the prince is illegitimate and you can be the king. However, y'all, there is always the threat, if you have got somebody else who is a good contender for the throne, that people will rise up and have a rebellion. So as long as his brother's children are still alive, there is a threat that they could come back with an army of people who support them. And in fact, while they're being kept in the tower, there is an attempt to free them that fails. So eventually what happens is that people stop seeing them. They used to see them like playing around in the yard. They used to see them at the windows. People see them less and less, and some accounts say that the older prince was acting like he was gonna die at any moment, like he was taking confession every day. His spirits were like really low, probably because he knew his uncle was a big fat jerk. Now, we don't know that Richard killed him, but what Richard would gain from killing them is like total security in his claim for the throne. If they're dead, nobody can like overthrow him with them, and they don't have another good like person to put on the throne instead of him. So, is he to blame? Maybe. But we don't know that they died. There are other theories that maybe they did escape, or maybe they were allowed to go into hiding and to live with other people. And there's also this theory, because Richard only ruled for 2 years until he got like mad defeated by Henry Tudor. So some people think that Henry Tudor might have been the person who had the princess killed, but like it's kind of unlikely, because people were like, yo, Richard, where's the princess? And he never showed them to be like, yeah, here they are. So they could have escaped and maybe somebody didn't claim it, but we don't really know. It's still a mystery. To add to the idea that they probably were murdered, though, they did find 2 child-sized skeletons under some stairs at the tower. They actually found like some other skeletons there too, and they were never done DNA testing, so we don't know if they actually did belong to the princes or if they escaped. So, what happened? We have almost no idea. There are not very many good sources. Shakespeare wrote a play about it where Richard is definitely the bad guy, but his name got major trash, especially after the Tudors took the throne, because he had been their enemy. So, there's no way to know what actually happened. And that's my spill the tea on history, and this is basically the end of my build, guys. So I hope that you like this. Let me know what you think about the story. Let me know if you think Richard actually did murder his nephews, which like seems likely, but I don't know. Maybe you know something, I don't know. If you want to find this build, it's called La Vieille on the gallery. I will post the name below. And I want to thank you guys for watching and supporting my channel. Like the video if you liked it. If you didn't like it, also like the video. Subscribe to my channel, turn on the bells and all the YouTube stuff, and I love you deeply and hope to see you again.